2 cars were stationed at a considerable distance from the helipad as Nathaniel Hawthorne expertly landed his helicopter. His friends, Ethan Blackwood and Alexander Sterndale, were waiting by one of the cars, each with a drink in hand. Ethan erupted into laughter as Nathaniel gracefully descended from the copter and Alexander raised a cup in salute. "Let the party begin," Nathaniel Hawthorne declared loudly, hands raised before donning his sunshade and strolling towards his friends. More helicopters descended, and his security details swiftly joined him. The 3 young men embraced and shook hands. "Welcome to Sylvan Ridge, Alaska, Nat. I assure you you're in for the best time ever," Ethan assured him, prompting laughter from Nathaniel. "I expect nothing less, my friend," he replied. Ethan took the wheel. Nathaniel opened the door to the back seat, and Alexander settled in the front passenger seat. Nathaniel leaned back with a sigh as the car set in motion, followed closely by a second car carrying Nathaniel's bodyguards. The helipad was approximately a mile from town, and Nathaniel gazed through the window at the snow-covered plain, relishing the sight of the snow-draped landscape. Ethan drove past a substantial building with clear signage indicating it was a hospital. A girl emerged from the wide front door, bundled in winter gear. She captured Nathaniel's attention, and even as Ethan's car drove past the building, Nathaniel turned his head to observe the girl through the rearview window, watching her getting into a beat-up truck. "Who's that cute little mama?" Nathaniel inquired. "Aria Everly, daughter of the only surgeon in our small county," Ethan responded. "She's quite a sight, but trust me, she's as prickly as a cactus," he added. "Interesting," Nathaniel remarked. Ethan noticed Nathaniel still glancing through the rear window and cautioned him, "Take your mind off her, man. She's not your type." Nathaniel chuckled. "Now I'm intrigued," he said, turning his attention to Ethan. He winked. Ethan laughed. "Will she be coming to your party?" Nathaniel questioned. "I invited her." "I don't know if she'll come, though," Ethan sighed. "She's a med student." "What school?" Nathaniel asked. "Our school," Alexander replied. "What? How come I've never seen her?" Nathaniel expressed surprise. "Because she's a med student, bro." "She's very focused on that stuff," Alexander explained. "Wow," Nathaniel murmured, settling back in the seat with a playful smile. What he had anticipated as a potentially dull trip to a small town in Alaska for Ethan's sake was turning out to be far from boring. Aria Everly sounded like a challenge, and Nathaniel Hawthorne never backed down from a worthy challenge. His friend's warning only added to the allure. Nathaniel hadn't encountered a woman he couldn't have, but the thrill of the chase tended to wear off quickly, turning his life into an unending drama. Hours later, Ethan's birthday party was in full swing. Ethan discreetly introduced 2 girls to Nathaniel, subtly signaling for him to take his pick. However, Nathaniel, uninterested in an easy catch, had set his sights on Aria Everly and couldn't shake off the feeling. Despite this, he danced with the 2 girls Ethan introduced, seamlessly alternating between them on the dance floor. Later on, Nathaniel noticed Ethan's surprise as he looked toward the porch. Nathaniel watched as Ethan hurriedly opened the door, welcoming someone in. Nathaniel immediately recognized the girl as Aria Everly, the one he had seen in front of the hospital. "Wow, I can't believe you came." "Thank you," Ethan expressed gratitude, accepting a wrapped gift from Aria. "I'm sorry I'm late. I was helping out at the hospital," Aria explained. "Nah, you're not late. The party's just getting started." "Really appreciate you coming, Aria," Ethan said. Meanwhile, Nathaniel, not paying attention to the girls he was dancing with, accidentally bumped into one of them. "Oh," the girl exclaimed. "I'm sorry, my bad," Nathaniel apologized, hands raised, flashing a bright, charming smile before excusing himself. He joined Ethan and Aria, standing beside Ethan and giving him a friendly pat on the back before directing his attention at Aria. His eyes locked with hers, and for about a minute, Nathaniel forgot himself. His ever-present smirk slowly eased from his face as he peered into Aria's eyes. The color of her eyes was a mix of brown, both dark and light, with a tinge of gold. Her hair, A full, rich cascade of dark brown curls had tinted streaks of gold strands, long lashes cast shadows below her eyes, and her lips were full and lush, with a pinkish bottom that made him swallow hard. Feeling uncomfortable with Nathaniel's unabashed stare, Ethan used his elbow to jab Nathaniel in the rib. Nathaniel startled, blinked, and seemed to regain his composure, smiling as he said, "Hey," glancing from Ethan to Aria. "I'm Nathaniel Hawthorne," he added, offering his hand for a handshake. However, she looked at his hand and then back at his face, saying in a dry tone, "Hey to you too, Nathan." She threw a closed-mouthed smile at Ethan and walked away. "What the hell was that?" Nathaniel said, a bit befuddled and irritated at her snobbish attitude. "She knows you, Nat. Come on." "We go to the same university," Ethan replied. Nathaniel shrugged and protested. "I told you, I don't know the girl." Ethan let out a sigh. "Come on, man, let's just have fun, huh?" Ethan suggested. "Let me put this away. I can't believe she came and brought a gift." He sounded excited as he walked away. Despite his irritation at Aria Everly's response to him, Nathaniel found himself unable to resist tracking her movements around the room with his eyes. She was unlike the type of girls he typically pursued, tall, slim, with a model-like figure. However, she captivated him nonetheless. Aria was curvier and shorter, her hair a few shades darker, and yet he couldn't take his eyes from her. He watched as she gracefully shed her long winter jacket, revealing the form-fitting dress underneath. Nathaniel's eyes fixated on her alluring figure, noticing her slim waist, wide hips, and full chest. Reluctantly, he couldn't help but admit to himself that she was breathtakingly beautiful, surpassing any girl he had encountered before. As if she could sense him looking at her, Aria looked in his direction, and their eyes met and locked across the room. The two stared at each other until Alexander approached, diverting Aria's attention away from him. Nathaniel, for some inexplicable reason, felt a spark of anger at the intrusion, growing even more irritated when Alexander rested a hand on Aria's shoulder. Baffled by his intense reaction to the situation and the stupid girl, he looked away, lowering his gaze. Upon raising his eyes again, Alexander was leading Aria to a side couch. Nathaniel turned away, headed to the back exit door, and outside, one of his bodyguards handed him a hip flask. Unscrewing the lid, Nathaniel took a sip and strolled down the porch in the cold, settling on a swing chair in the backyard. Laughter from inside the house caught his attention. Through the glass wall, he observed Aria laughing and dancing with Ethan. Taking another sip, he watched Aria enjoying herself with his friends and continued drinking before downing the entire contents. He couldn't comprehend why the girl affected him so deeply. Her blatant brush-off grated at him, and instead of his anger diminishing, it kindled further when he couldn't bear the sight and sound of her having fun with his friends any longer. Determined, he got up and went back inside. Aria had left the dance floor, standing alone by the wall leading to the back exit door. Nathaniel approached her, trapping her with both hands on either side as he lowered his face to peer into her eyes. "How come you're nice to everyone except me?" he probed. She rolled her eyes. "Get over yourself, Nathan. I greeted you just like I did everyone else," Aria said, avoiding his gaze. "Look at me, Aria," Nathaniel commanded. Aria flicked her eyes up, glaring at him. "What did I do?" Nathaniel asked, sounding bewildered. For the first time, a girl was making him feel vulnerable and insecure, and he didn't like it. "My God, Nathan, what do you want from me? Can you go bother someone else?" she said in evident exasperation. Nathaniel sensed himself losing ground, at a loss for how to handle the situation. "Did I pick a girl over you somewhere on campus? What did I do, huh?" he asked in blatant arrogance, chuckling. "'Cause if that's the problem, I can fix it right now, honey." Aria arched an eyebrow at his ridiculousness. "Are you for real?" she said in annoyance. 100%. He rasped and lowered his head to press a kiss to her lips. Aria gasped in shock, which gave him the chance to slip his tongue into her mouth. Nathaniel felt an intense rush of desire, but was stunned as Aria forcefully pushed him back with a growl, and a loud slap echoed through the room. Blinking, his vision cleared, revealing Aria throwing daggers at him with her eyes. The sting of her palm against his cheek made him raise his hand to touch the spot in shock. The music had stopped, all movement ceased, and every eye was on them. Everyone had witnessed Aria Everly slap Nathaniel Hawthorne. The tension was palpable. Nathaniel felt highly humiliated. Aria growled, stormed away, grabbed her jacket and headed to the front exit door. I better go. I have something to do early at the hospital tomorrow anyway. I'm sorry, Ethan, she said without meeting his gaze. Happy birthday, she added, giving Ethan a quick hug before rushing out. Nathaniel, unable to let it rest, followed her. Nat, come on. Ethan attempted to intervene, but Nathaniel brushed him off, consumed by fury. He reached Aria just as she swung open the door to her ugly old truck, grabbing and pinning her against the side away from prying eyes. What the hell is your problem? Aria cried out. I'm not done with you. We still haven't reached a conclusion as to why you are being such a bitch, so here goes. Let me guess. You're one of those students at Harvard on charity, resenting those of us who can actually afford it, he said, peering darkly into her eyes. You are such an asshole, Nathan. Aria whimpered, her hurt evident and oddly satisfying to Nathaniel. I'm going to interpret that as no. Okay then, if that is not it, and my sin isn't failing to notice you and pick you out from the lot to get with, why then are you being so shitty to me, Aria Everly? You are a narcissistic jerk, she cried softly. Narcissistic, huh? He repeated. Using one hand to seize her forearm and the other to grab her by the jaw, he forcefully crushed his lips against hers, kissing her again, and didn't let go even as she continued to hit him. He hated that she resisted and fought him away, yet he relished the feel of her lips and her soft body against his. Pulling back to breathe, he watched as she drew in labored breath, tears streaming down her face. With a clenched jaw, he retrieved his wallet, counted several bills, and deftly tucked them into her cleavage. Aria lunged at him, hitting him on the face and chest. Take your damn money and shove it, you bastard, she growled. Nathaniel, satisfied with equally humiliating her, evaded her blows and walked away. Her soft sobs made him feel like a bastard, but he didn't stop or go back to apologize. He was irrationally angry, and he couldn't tell why. Months later, on the eve of graduation, Nathaniel arrives late to a frat party, scanning the crowd for Ethan and Alex. His parents were in town and had requested his presence for a celebration dinner, as they wouldn't be able to attend his graduation ceremony due to an overseas summit. Unable to refuse, and as a result, he returned to campus around 2 a.m, finding most students in various states of inebriation. Ethan's drunken, slurred greeting reached him as he navigated toward his friend, discovering Alex slouched on a side couch with his girlfriend, Anna. Whoa, you guys look like you've had too much fun already. Did I miss it all? Nathaniel laughed, accepting a drink from Ethan's unsteady hand. Peering into the cup, he took the drink close to his nose and coughed at the sharp tang of the alcohol mix. My God, what is this abomination? He exclaimed. Come on, drink up, don't be a Debbie Downer, Ethan urged. I think I'm going to pass on this one, he said, chuckling as he surveyed the room, realizing most were either asleep or moving about like the living dead. Come on, guys, let's go. Looks like this party is over, Nathaniel suggested. Wait, we can't go yet. Ethan protested, then paused with furrowed brows as he struggled to focus. Oh, yes, we invited Aria. She'd gone to the restroom, so we can't leave until she returns. Don't go being mean to her now. She came with us with the assurance you wouldn't be coming, Ethan slurred. Nathaniel's heart skipped a beat at the mention of the girl from Ethan's small town in Alaska who had haunted his dreams for months. His eyes automatically scanned the crowd, settling on a group of boys heading down a hallway. This is a boys' dorm, and you allowed her to go to the restroom alone? Nathaniel asked with furrowed brows. I'll be right back, he said without waiting for a reply, hurrying in the direction of the restroom. Leave me alone, please. Aria Everly's familiar voice reached his ears when he was about 10 feet away from the restroom. He quickened his steps, pushing the door open forcefully. 3 boys had trapped Aria in a corner, one pulling down his pants while the other 2 attempted to drag her to the floor. Hey! Leave her the hell alone, Nathaniel yelled, causing the boys to startle. Don't interfere, man. What was she doing here if she didn't want it? The one pulling down his pants slurred. Nathaniel grabbed onto him and pushed him hard against the side wall, making the boy gasp. Say that again, and I'll bust your face open, Nathaniel growled. Sorry, man, the guy said with raised hands in surrender, trousers slipping down, exposing his erection. Nathaniel pushed back from him with disgust, turning to face the other 2 as they edged away from Aria. Nathan? Aria said his name in relief, and he felt a pang of emotion that she recognized him. She was the only one who called him Nathan, and for some reason, he loved it. Like Ethan, she was also unsteady on her feet. It was evident she had also partaken in the unholy concoctions served at the party, often laced with substances. He carried her in a bridal style, and she immediately wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in the nook of his neck, a display of trust that made his heart strangely constricted. "What happened?" Ethan asked once they returned to the common room before shaking his head in a bid to stay awake. "You shouldn't have let her go there alone, man," Nathaniel said, unable to keep anger from his voice. "Oh my God, was she attacked?" "Show me the fuckers, let me at them, let me at them!" Ethan, indignant but barely steady on his feet, swayed comically, throwing punches. "Come, let's get out of here," Nathaniel said, beckoning his bodyguards to assist his friends. He then leaves, carrying Aria. Just as his driver pulled out of the dorm driveway, seeing that Aria had fallen asleep in his arms in the front seat, Nathaniel turned to the back of his car, calling his friend Ethan to ask directions to Aria's dorm. Ethan? However, Ethan had fallen asleep and was now snoring loudly in the back of the car. With a resigned sigh, Nathaniel instructed the driver, "Take us to my apartment." Nathaniel gently carried Aria into his room, carefully placing her on his bed. Removing her shoes, he smiled at the smallness of her feet and delicately arranged them on the mattress before covering her with the sheets. After ensuring his friends were settled in his spare rooms, he returned to check on Aria. Standing by the bed, watching her sleep, he couldn't help but think she was the most beautiful and captivating girl he had ever seen. He wondered why she seemed to dislike him, aside, of course, from him bullying her the first time they met. It was a perplexing mixture of botheration and intrigue. He wished he could address the issue, but feared it might make him appear pathetic. Nathaniel concluded that Aria Everly enjoyed humiliating him, and he wasn't willing to give her another chance. Deciding to go and sleep on the couch, he reached across her body for the other pillow on the other side of the bed, only to freeze in place when her eyelashes fluttered open. It was as if she had cast a spell, rendering him immobile and enthralled. I just want to take the pillow," he stuttered, gesturing to the pillow, his voice deep, low and raspy, his breathing labored as if each breath drawn was torturous. "You saved me, Nathan," Aria whispered, looking into his eyes. Nathaniel swallowed, thinking he ought to say something witty but couldn't find his voice. "Thank you," she added as she cupped his jaw and kissed him. Nathaniel's heart lunged hard against the wall of his chest in a mix of fear and thrilling excitement. But then he recalled that she was intoxicated and harbored a genuine disdain for him in reality, making it unlikely that she knew what she was doing. Dr. Williams entered the small consultation room, finding Nathaniel Hawthorne and his lawyer Tom Hill awaiting him. "How are you doing, Nathaniel?" Dr. Williams asked in a somber tone. "Alive," Nathaniel rasped in dark humor. The doctor pressed his lips together in a semblance of a smile. "Thanks for being here for him, Tom," Dr. Williams said to Nathaniel's lawyer, also a dear friend to Nathaniel's late father. "Nathaniel is more than a client. I've known him since he was a boy." "He is family now," Tom Hill replied. Dr. Williams nodded in acknowledgement and lowered his gaze to the medical reports in his hands. When he hesitated, staring at the report, Nathaniel spoke. "That bad, huh?" The older man swallowed, raising his eyes to hold Nathaniel's. "I appreciate your patience, Nat. We've been monitoring your condition closely and, unfortunately, the previous treatments haven't yielded the desired results. Your bone marrow cancer is quite aggressive," Nathaniel nodded, lowering his gaze as Tom patted him on the back of his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Nat. Considering the circumstances, I must be candid. The best option now is a stem cell transplantation. It's a challenging procedure, but it offers a chance for a more effective treatment." "What are my chances with that, Doc?" Nathaniel asked, without raising his face to look at the doctor. "It's a complex process, but with a compatible donor, particularly a close family member, the odds improve significantly," he replied. Nathaniel chuckled, a shallow, hollow laughter lacking mirth, then looked up into the doctor's eyes. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you, Will." "We'll start exploring potential donors within the family immediately," Tom said. "That's a prudent approach, Tom. The sooner we identify a suitable donor, the better. We'll coordinate with the transplant team and initiate the necessary preparations," he said. Please, Nat, don't give up yet, the older man added before leaving. I told you I felt like death, Nathaniel said as soon as he was alone with Tom. You are way too young. You will survive this, Tom said with feeling. Nathaniel shook his head, feeling drained from all the treatment his body had been forced to undergo for months now, and still no positive results. I need you to do something for me, Nathaniel began. Yes. What is it? Tom replied, coming to stand in Nathaniel's view. There's a hospital in Sylvan Ridge, Alaska. It's a small town. A college friend used to live in the area. That's how I knew the place, Nathaniel explained. Okay, do you want a second opinion or something? I thought you were fine with Dr. Williams. He's been the family doctor since before you were born, Tom asked. Don't worry, I'm not looking to change my doctor. I want you to buy the hospital, Nathaniel said. Tom frowned, wondering why Nathaniel was thinking of buying a hospital right then when they should be concentrating on getting a donor. I don't understand. Did you say buy the hospital? Tom asked. Yes, buy the hospital and lay everyone off, Nathaniel said, giving the lawyer a blank stare. Tom scrutinized him, wondering if his dear friend's son hadn't finally lost it. Perhaps the illness was beginning to affect his mental state, his brows furrowed with worry. Forgive me, Nat, I know you hate it when I question your judgment, but son, why would we want to do that? Tom asked, choosing his words without showing his fear that Nathaniel must be losing his mind. I'm glad you remember that I hate being questioned. Do as I say, Tom, Nathaniel said in a firm, authoritative voice. Tom had no choice but to nod. 4 weeks later, roughly 4,100 miles away from New York in Sylvan Ridge, Alaska, Aria awoke to the shrill sound of her cell phone on the bedside table. With sleep masks covering her eyes, she blindly reached for the device, inadvertently knocking off both the cell phone and the table lamp. The clattering sound compelled her to swiftly remove the eye masks, groaning in irritation as she juggled the phone and lamp. Half of her body was on the mattress, and the other bent down on the side of the bed. She answered the phone. Yes, she said into the phone in a breathless tone. Miss Everly, good morning. Is it a bad time? The voice on the other end belonged to Mr. Charles Jones, the banker responsible for the hospital's finances, and it immediately sparked a feeling of dread in Aria. He had been persistent in pressuring her to repay the hospital's debts, which had accumulated due to her late father's practice of treating locals without insurance or funds. To buy time and cover the debts, he had mortgaged the hospital building twice. Aria had been dedicating the past months to navigating this financial crisis, making difficult decisions like turning patients away due to a lack of funds. No. Good morning, Mr. Charles, she replied, attempting to sit up on the bed. 2 sets of tiny feet clad in white onesies came into view, giggling at the sight of her near fall. The twins, Liam and Owen, quickly lay on the area rug, scooting under her face to peer up into her eyes. What are you doing? Liam, the second twin, said with a big grin. Mummy, are you falling? Owen, the first twin, interjected excitedly. Aria tried not to laugh. Shh, she said, placing a finger over her lips. The 2 boys imitated the act, stressing the word shh before bursting into a fit of giggles. Aria couldn't help but chuckle, her heart swelling with love for her adorable boys. There's been a new development, Miss Everly. Are you there? Mr. Charles inquired. Yes, I am. What development? Aria asked, her anxiety escalating. Would you like to come over to the office, or would you rather discuss it on the phone? The man's words heightened her unease. Go on, tell me, she urged. Nathaniel Hawthorne of Farmer Hawthorne has bought the debt of Everly Hospital. What that means is that you are no longer owing the bank, and there are necessary documents that need your signature before we can call this a wrap. I don't know what you have done, Miss Everly, but your guardian angel is surely doing overtime, granting you wishes. I wish I had half of your luck, the man continued, unaware of the impact of his revelation. Still hanging upside down from the bed, breathing became difficult, and Aria sat up, staring blankly into space. Nathaniel Hawthorne bought her debt? The thought resounded, causing her heart to race and fear to grip her. Her eyes automatically settled on her twins. Why was Nathan buying her debt now? Has he found out? Mummy, Liam called, opening his arms for his mother to carry him atop her bed. Aria automatically lifted him and his brother, placing them on the bed. She pulled them into a hug with her free hand, holding them tight, as if that would protect them from what she feared was coming. "So would you have me send the papers, or would you come in to sign them?" Mr. Charles's voice reached her ears, alerting Aria, who had forgotten he was still on the phone. Aye, send them. Send them to my office. Thanks," Aria said, and cut the line off while the man was still talking. Her eyes darted as she tried to make sense of Nathaniel's sudden interest in her. Her phone rang again, making her flinch. She answered and sighed in relief when she saw it was Mabel White, the hospital's chief nursing officer. "Good morning, Mabel," Aria began, but her words were immediately intercepted by a perplexing question. "What is happening, Aria?" the older woman asked, her voice tinged with anger and panic. In all the time Aria had known her, Mabel had only seemed rattled once, and that was when she broke the news of her father's sudden passing. "Happening? I don't understand," Aria replied, puzzled. "Where are you?" Mabel inquired. "At home, I just woke up. I did the night shift. Is something wrong?" Aria asked, her brows furrowed. "You tell me, since your new lawyer just distributed layoff letters to all the hospital staff," Mabel responded. "Wow, what?" Aria exclaimed, stunned. "Giving upfront pay for 2 years' work is mighty generous, Aria, but this goes beyond just a job for all of us." Mabel, you really got me, but this is quite an unsettling joke," Aria said in comical disbelief. "You're the only one laughing, hon," Mabel replied. Aria swallowed hard. "Is Nathaniel behind this? First he buys her debt, and now her hospital staff are getting paid off. That can't be a coincidence. So what does he want? And why is he doing this?"
Don't try convince the customer from the certain country to buy exactly in the same way like in your mother country.
After leaving her twin sons with her aunt, giving her a scrutinizing once. After leaving her twin sons with her aunt and arranging for her friend Anita, who was also an employee at the hospital, to assist her aging aunt with babysitting, Aria Everly embarked on a 7-hour flight to New York. Within minutes of landing, she found herself standing on the front porch of the imposing Hawthorne's mansion. As she prepared to knock on the grand door, echoes of the past flooded her mind. "Why do you always have bodyguards with you? Doesn't it make you feel weird?" Aria's voice reverberated in her head. "Because it's dangerous for people like me not to have security," Nathaniel's deep voice responded in a laughing tone. "Contrary to what you think, Aria, I'm not doing this to look cool." The door swung open, revealing a tall man in an impeccable suit towering over her. "I'm sorry for keeping you waiting, Dr. Everly. I'm Tom Hill, Mr. Nathaniel Hawthorne's lawyer. Please do come in," he said, stepping aside to welcome her. "Thank you. I'm sure you know why I am here," Aria began, eager to conclude the ordeal swiftly. Nervousness clung to her after the high-strung journey. Facing Nathaniel again frightened her, and the way they parted haunted her, making her uneasy. Though he had been angry, it had been years, and he was the one who walked away. She attempted to see him several times, but he refused. So why was he doing this now, after 4 years of silence? "Please, doctor, let's talk in the study. I'm certain you must be tired from the journey. Would you like to freshen up or have dinner before we commence our meeting?" the older man suggested, interrupting her thoughts. Aria, nervous and with her heart racing, declined the offer. No, thanks. I would like to get this over with if it's okay with you," she said, raising her eyes boldly to meet his. He nodded and gestured for her to follow him. "This way, doctor," he said, leading Aria through pristine hallways to a home office. "Sit down, please," he urged, motioning to a side couch. Aria complied and sank into the luxurious leather. "Dr. Everly, you have quite an outstanding background, graduated top of your class, interned at the very best hospital here in New York under Dr. Rowan, one of the best surgeons globally. The report says you were offered a job to work alongside Dr. Rowan after your residency, an offer you accepted, but then resigned after 2 years and a few months to return to Alaska to take over your father's hospital." Tom Hill read from a paper, seemingly presenting a report. "I don't understand what all that has to do with—" Aria began to interrupt. The older man directed a blank stare at her with a raised eyebrow, as if questioning her manners for interrupting. "Patience, Dr. Everly," Tom Hill said, sweeping a hand over the report he held. My point in all this is that you have such a promising career, and yet you gave that up to run back to your remote town in Alaska to take over a dying hospital." Aria grew defensive, offended by the man's tone. "That dying hospital is my family's, and it's much more than just a hospital," she replied. Tom Hill smiled. "There, that's the conclusion I was getting at. So then it should be easy to accept my client's terms to get your hospital back," he said. "Terms?" Aria repeated, her anxiety growing. Tom Hill pushed a folder forward on Nathaniel's desk and placed a ballpoint pen beside it. Aria stood up, her brows furrowing as she approached the desk, fixing the older man with a searching gaze. Then she lowered her gaze and gingerly opened the folder. With each page she turned, her blood pressure rose. By the time she reached the last page, her hands were shaking. She slowly closed the folder and looked up to meet the older man's eyes. "Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, and despite her efforts to contain her emotions, her voice still shook slightly. "No, Dr. Everly, I'm afraid not," Tom Hill replied. "I'm a surgeon, as your report indicates, one of the best globally. It's obvious that caregiving isn't within my expertise. Besides, why would Nathaniel—" she started to say, and then paused as a thought struck her. Why would Nathaniel need a caregiver? She released a shaky breath, and for a moment there was silence as she tried to gather the courage to ask her next question. "What's wrong with him?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, laden with emotions. "I'm not at liberty to tell you," Tom Hill began, observing the young woman's struggle to contain her emotions. Formerly intrigued by Nathaniel's motives in playing this game with the young doctor, he'd discovered the shared university background between Aria Everly and Nathaniel. She had studied medicine while Nathaniel studied pharmacy. Tom guessed that they had some history, but Nathaniel's pride hindered him from straightforwardly seeking the doctor's help. Perhaps something happened back at school, but watching Aria inquire about Nathaniel's health, Tom sensed it was more complex than he had imagined. "Please," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom Hill walked to stand behind Nathaniel's desk, retrieved the medical report from the drawer, and placed it slowly in front of her. He observed as she stared at the report for about a minute before cautiously opening it. "Patient medical report. Let's name Nathaniel Hawthorne. Age 28. Gender, male. Medical history, diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. Summary. Nathaniel Hawthorne was initially diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia 6 months ago. Despite rigorous chemotherapy and standard treatments, his leukemia continued to progress, showing resistance. Current medical condition. Recent bone marrow biopsies indicate an alarming increase in abnormal cells. White blood cell count remains elevated, and overall health has significantly declined. Without further intervention, the prognosis is dire. Recommended treatment, stem cell transplantation." Aria's eyes settled on the donors section, and tears blurred her vision when she saw it was blank. Pushing back from the desk, she walked briskly to a corner, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook as she cried quietly. "He has no donors?" Aria asked in a voice that was barely above a whisper, sobbing quietly. "No," Tom Hill said simply. What about his parents?" she asked. "We lost them a year ago. Plane crash," he replied. Aria nodded, still facing away from him. "May I see him, please?" she asked. "Dr. Everly, before we can move to that, you need to accept his terms and sign the—" Tom Hill began to say, but then paused when Aria moved. Aria abruptly turned around, crossed the room to the desk, took the ball pen beside the folder, flipped the pages of the contract open, and deftly appended her signature. Tom Hill breathed with relief, but when she raised her bloodshot eyes to meet his heart constricted at the pain in them. "May I see him now, please?" Tom Hill nodded, and, gesturing for her to follow him, led Aria out of Nathaniel's study and back to the foyer. Taking a quick elevator lift to the topmost floor, he guided her to Nathaniel's quarters. Aria's dread of seeing Nathaniel had shifted from fear of discovery to concern about his condition. She worried she might struggle to conceal her emotions if he appeared frail and sickly, as indicated in the medical report. But a few meters from the double doors framing the only entrance at the end of the hallway, she heard a female giggle, triggering a specific memory. She took a deep breath and continued to follow the lawyer. Tom Hill knocked once and waited before pushing the door open. "Nathaniel, sorry to intrude, but Dr. Everly is here to see you," Tom Hill announced. Aria sensed a hint of disapproval in his tone as she walked across the threshold and saw Nathaniel on his bed, covered from the waist down. She quickly noted he had lost some weight, but Nathaniel had always possessed a tall, athletic build. Instead of his usual long, full hair, he wore a beanie cap and looked as handsome as ever. The two locked eyes for about a minute before a feminine voice interrupted the moment. "Who is this?" she inquired. Aria blinked, shifting her gaze from Nathaniel to a tall, beautiful lady seated on the mattress beside him. Images of Nathaniel's typical preferences for women flashed in her mind. Average height, blonde, blue-eyed, with a model body type. This particular one fits the specification perfectly. She lowered her gaze, wondering if she had been hasty in signing that contract. Nathaniel wasn't looking as she had expected, but she had begun to think that the whole act of buying her hospital was done for a sinister motive. When she heard him say, "Julia, meet Dr. Everly. She is going to be my new caregiver." "Dr. Everly, meet my fiancée, Julia Davies." Her lips stretched into a knowing, humorless smile. "A caregiver," Julia repeated, clearly as bemused as Aria had been a few hours before. Aria, familiar with Nathaniel's dark humor and irrational reactions, felt hurt that he was still the same arrogant, selfish, presumptuous jerk she'd fallen in love with in the university. She wondered if he'd thought this was a great plan for her to atone for her sins. The blank space under the donor report replayed in her head. Had he found out about their sons and wanted to punish her? She negated the thought immediately. No, Nathaniel wouldn't have been this calm if he'd found out. His lawyer would have informed her of his plans to take her children, not to become his caregiver. Some other scenario occurred to her, and she drew a shaky breath, knowing Nathaniel was capable of it. She swallowed and looked up, meeting his gaze across the room. His eyes, dark and withdrawn, held a gleam of resignation she had seen in them the last time they were together, right before he turned and walked away from her life. No, Nathaniel Hawthorne hadn't brought her here for assistance or care. Her Nathan had a different agenda. He had bought her hospital, laid off her staff, and paid them off generously to compel her to come to him. Wanting her by his side to watch him die, she turned around, heading for the exit. "You should think carefully before crossing that threshold, Dr. Everly. I am a man with nothing else to lose." "You shouldn't cross me," Nathaniel threatened. Aria released a shaky breath, resisting the urge to break down. She didn't halt or falter. Tears streamed down her face as she approached the elevator doors. But before she could get inside the elevator, Tom Hill's frantic cry halted her steps. "Dr. Everly, please help!" Aria hurriedly retraced her steps back to Nathaniel's room, his coughing fits reaching her ears. Upon getting to the door, she found Nathaniel on the floor halfway to the door, coughing up blood. Julia was right beside him, giving him a napkin to hold to his mouth. Aria sprang into action, gently pushing Julia aside to kneel by Nathaniel's side, cradling him into her arms. Nathaniel met her gaze, his chest heaving. Aria's surgeon instincts kicked in. "Get him some water, please," she called out, making him sit up to elevate his upper body. Tom Hill rushed to fetch water, handing a glass to Aria. Julia, annoyed at Aria's assertiveness, clicked her tongue and took a seat at the foot of the bed. Carefully holding the glass to Nathaniel's lips, Aria instructed, "Sip this slowly." As he took small sips, she observed his breathing patterns, noting signs of distress. Worried about the severity of the coughing fit, Aria said to Tom Hill, "Quick, please search my bag for an inhaler." The older man swiftly helped her rummage through her bag, producing a brand new inhaler she always carried for emergencies. "Hold on, Nathan. Take a deep breath and use this inhaler. It should help open your airways," she guided, demonstrating the proper technique. Following her instructions, Nathaniel's coughing gradually subsided. "That's it, love. Take a deep breath. In and out, baby," Aria softly muttered, unaware she had used an endearment, tenderly stroking his temple with her thumb. Nathaniel noticed, his eyes pricking with tears. So did Tom Hill and Julia Davies. With a furrowed brow, the other woman focused entirely on Aria, giving her a scrutinizing once-over. Julia couldn't believe her ears. Had the doctor, Nathaniel's supposed caregiver, really just referred to Nathaniel as love and baby? Julia couldn't believe her ears. Did the doctor just call Nathaniel love and baby? Who was Dr. Everly to Nathaniel, and why had he brought her here? It was clear she didn't want to stay and was being forced to do so. Hell, as soon as she walked out of the room, Nathaniel had panicked, rushing after her before succumbing to a fit of coughing. Witnessing Dr. Everly care for Nathaniel, it was evident they had history, and it was certainly not platonic. Julia's heart ached at the way Nathaniel had gazed into the other woman's eyes, and how tenderly she had attended to him as if he were precious to her. In the few years she had known Nathaniel, she never knew him to be an overly emotional person. He had always been withdrawn and aloof, and even their relationship had been more business than anything else. Nathaniel had always made it clear he wanted nothing but sex, but Julia wanted more. Her father was one of the major shareholders at Farmer Hawthorne, and she'd met Nathaniel at one of the company's parties when she'd come to represent her father. She'd thought the entire event boring until she set her eyes on Nathaniel Hawthorne. Of course she had known of him. There was hardly anyone who hadn't heard of the big farmer, brilliant playboy heir. Julia found it was one thing to hear of him and another to be the object of his full focus. His charm was disarming and enthralling. Julia had been struck by his looks, power, and wealth. As a fashion model who was no longer a spring chicken, she quickly realized how easily she could retire as Mrs. Hawthorne. But Nathaniel wasn't interested in her in that way. All of her attempts to ensnare him had been futile until his health started to deteriorate. The other shareholders wanted him replaced as the chairman, due to concerns that he might not be fit enough to take up the challenges. Julia saw it as an opportunity and asked her father to pledge his support for Nathaniel's chairmanship. With the support of her father's shares, along with a few other shareholders, Nathaniel was able to retain his seat. Although he had since then proven to the board that, regardless of his illness, he could still handle his responsibilities, he still went ahead to propose to her. Working despite his illness wasn't great for his health, but Nathaniel was stubborn and hated being perceived as weak. And now that he had fixed a date for their wedding, this doctor shows up as if having to deal with him being sick with cancer wasn't enough. Whatever was happening and whoever Dr. Everly was to Nathaniel, Julia knew she had to get rid of her before she came between her and Nathaniel. She couldn't afford to let anything or anyone thwart her plan to become Mrs. Hawthorne. Julia Davies stood up and briskly walked to the head of the bed, reaching for a small dangling golden bell attached to the bedpole beside Nathaniel's headboard. As she pulled it down, a soft, melodious tone echoed through the room, signaling the arrival of 2 male servants in uniforms. Upon seeing them, Julia purposefully approached Aria, who was still cradling Nathaniel's head in her lap. "Thank you, Dr. Everly. I think I can take care of my fiancé now," she said, gesturing to the servants to assist Nathaniel. Aria slowly shifted out from under Nathaniel's head as he was helped up to his bed. Sensing eyes on her, she looked in that direction and caught Tom Hill's gaze. There was a slight twitch at the corner of his lips, and she wondered what had piqued his interest. Turning away, Aria rose and faced the bed. Nathaniel had been tucked under the covers, and Julia was fussing over him. When she leaned in to kiss his forehead, Aria's eyes met Nathaniel's. She quickly looked away and cleared her throat, glancing at the small wristwatch around her left wrist. I have a plane to catch," Aria began. "Can you all please give me and Dr. Everly a few minutes alone?" Nathaniel said in a deep, gruff voice. "Darling, whatever for? As your future wife, I should know everything that's happening to you, and frankly, I don't understand why we need this Dr. Everly when we already have a seasoned doctor like Dr. Williams. Your health is far too important for us to rely on some inexperienced doctor," Julia protested, gesturing disdainfully to Aria. "Dr. Everly was rated top surgeon alongside Dr. Rowan 4 years ago. Regardless of her age, I would not call her inexperienced," Tom Hill interjected in a honeyed drawl, earning a glare from Julia. "I asked for a few minutes with Dr. Everly," Nathaniel reiterated, giving Julia a blank stare. Aria recognized that if Julia persisted, Nathaniel's calm facade would falter. "I've already read your contract, Mr. Hawthorne, and I appreciate you thinking of me. But it's not really going to work. I have a life that I cannot give up even temporarily for anything or anyone," Aria said, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Tom," Nathaniel said simply. The older man sighed. "Miss Davies, please come. Tom said, urging Julia out of the room with the assistance of the 2 male servants, ignoring her protests. Nathaniel, we really need to talk. This is ridiculous. I am your future wife, Julia protested. It's just for a few minutes, darling, Nathaniel said, though Aria detected strain in his voice. As the door clicked shut, leaving them alone, Nathaniel held her gaze and continued. Your hospital is temporarily shut down. I know your dad is gone. What other life is there in Sylvan Ridge, Dr. Everly? I don't see a ring on your finger. And if you are in a relationship... He spoke with cold disdain, pausing to draw in a breath. When he spoke again, his voice carried a slight vibration of contained anger. I was quite generous in my dealings with your debt, and on top of that, you will be paid for your service, so I am sure you would have plenty of money to go see him or bring him over. That's none of my concern, and I am certain Tom would not have brought you up here if you hadn't signed the contract. Nathan, Aria attempted to interrupt, but he didn't let her. This arrangement is not negotiable. You will stay, Aria. I don't give a damn what you have going on, or I swear I will auction off your hospital, take up the mortgage on your damn house, and buy off the entire Sylvan Ridge if I have to, he said in a voice that was forceful and gruff. Why are you doing this, Nathan? Aria asked in a low, shaky tone, noting his bitterness and anger. You're the one who walked away. I tried so many times to reach you, to talk to you, she started to say in a fervent tone. Don't flatter yourself, Doctor. This is not about us. I am merely employing your service, and I know you don't find me worthy enough of your time to accept, and I would not take a no for an answer, he retorted. Aria swallowed hard, giving him a searching gaze, both of their eyes welling with tears. That's not true, Nathan, Aria whispered, but she understood why he would think that, her heart constricted with regret. Nathaniel chuckled. We both know the truth, love, and I do not need your pity. Like I said, you are brought here for your expertise, he replied. Why can't you just get a regular caregiver then? Aria asked, feeling irritated as she wiped away a stray tear. I do not intend to stay in this bed until I draw my last breath. I am going to live my life regardless of my illness, and you will be by my side to make sure I make it back to this bed every day. And if I slip into a coma, you will be there to make certain I am not resuscitated. What? Have you gone mental? You are supposed to concentrate on getting a donor and not... Aria started to say with a feeling, but Nathaniel cut her off with a sharp retort. There's no donor, Dr. Everly. I have no blood relations that match. I have accepted that death is inevitable, and I don't want to talk about that with you. So, what is it going to be, Dr. Everly? Shall I rain down hell on Sylvan Ridge, or will you save us both the trouble? Aria, knowing he was hiding his true emotion behind anger as he always did, refused to accept his words. There's got to be another way, Nathan, she whispered with feeling. There's none, baby, he rasped in a moment of weakness, holding her gaze briefly before looking away. I can't stay here far away from Sylvan Ridge, Nathan, Aria said. Would you rather I come there to you then? Nathaniel probed. Aria tried to hide her dismay at the very thought. No, she said in a firm tone, lowering her gaze. To Nathaniel, it was clear she was hiding something or someone, likely a lover. He must be pretty special, Nathaniel remarked through gritted teeth. Nathan, Aria began, thinking perhaps she should tell him about their sons, but Nathaniel cut her off once more. I'm not going to change my mind, Dr. Everly, Nathaniel murmured as he picked up his phone. Shortly after, a notification sound came from Aria's phone. With furrowed brows, she glanced down at it and saw that Nathaniel had transferred a ridiculous amount of money into her account. When she raised her widened gaze to meet his, he added, Bring your life here to New York, Dr. Everly. I am prepared to stake all that I have on making you stay by my side until the very end. Aria grew irritated again, hating that he was throwing money at her to have his way instead of just asking her to stay. Does your fiancé know about your plan? Aria asked in a mocking drawl. Of course not, but it doesn't matter. She will be significantly compensated as my widow when I'm gone, he replied, causing Aria's heart to constrict. You're getting married? Aria forced herself to ask, her voice sounding low and gruff with emotion. Yes, in 3 weeks, he replied. Aria chuckled humorously and muttered, Of course. So will you be staying? Nathaniel asked. No, I can't, Aria replied. Who is? Did the doctor just call Nathaniel love and baby? Who was Dr. Everly to Nathaniel, and why had he brought her here? It was clear she didn't want to stay and was being forced to do so. Hell, as soon as she walked out of the room, Nathaniel had panicked, rushing after her before succumbing to a fit of coughing. Witnessing Dr. Everly care for Nathaniel, it was evident they had history, and it was certainly not platonic. Julia's heart ached at the way Nathaniel had gazed into the other woman's eyes, and how tenderly she had attended to him as if he were precious to her. In the few years she had known Nathaniel, she never knew him to be an overly emotional person. He had always been withdrawn and aloof, and even their relationship had been more business than anything else. Nathaniel had always made it clear he wanted nothing but sex, but Julia wanted more. Her father was one of the major shareholders at Farmer Hawthorne, and she'd met Nathaniel at one of the company's parties when she'd come to represent her father. She'd thought the entire event boring until she set her eyes on Nathaniel Hawthorne. Of course she had known of him. There was hardly anyone who hadn't heard of the big farmer, brilliant playboy heir. Julia found it was one thing to hear of him and another to be the object of his full focus. His charm was disarming and enthralling. Julia had been struck by his looks, power, and wealth. As a fashion model who was no longer a spring chicken, she quickly realized how easily she could retire as Mrs. Hawthorne. But Nathaniel wasn't interested in her in that way. All of her attempts to ensnare him had been futile until his health started to deteriorate. The other shareholders wanted him replaced as the chairman, due to concerns that he might not be fit enough to take up the challenges. Julia saw it as an opportunity and asked her father to pledge his support for Nathaniel's chairmanship. With the support of her father's shares, along with a few other shareholders, Nathaniel was able to retain his seat. Although he had since then proven to the board that, regardless of his illness, he could still handle his responsibilities, he still went ahead to propose to her. Working despite his illness wasn't great for his health, but Nathaniel was stubborn and hated being perceived as weak. And now that he had fixed a date for their wedding, this doctor shows up as if having to deal with him being sick with cancer wasn't enough. Whatever was happening and whoever Dr. Everly was to Nathaniel, Julia knew she had to get rid of her before she came between her and Nathaniel. She couldn't afford to let anything or anyone thwart her plan to become Mrs. Hawthorne. Julia Davies stood up and briskly walked to the head of the bed, reaching for a small dangling golden bell attached to the bedpole beside Nathaniel's headboard. As she pulled it down, a soft, melodious tone echoed through the room, signaling the arrival of 2 male servants in uniforms. Upon seeing them, Julia purposefully approached Aria, who was still cradling Nathaniel's head in her lap. "Thank you, Dr. Everly. I think I can take care of my fiancé now," she said, gesturing to the servants to assist Nathaniel. Aria slowly shifted out from under Nathaniel's head as he was helped up to his bed. Sensing eyes on her, she looked in that direction and caught Tom Hill's gaze. There was a slight twitch at the corner of his lips, and she wondered what had piqued his interest. Turning away, Aria rose and faced the bed. Nathaniel had been tucked under the covers, and Julia was fussing over him. When she leaned in to kiss his forehead, Aria's eyes met Nathaniel's. She quickly looked away and cleared her throat, glancing at the small wristwatch around her left wrist. I have a plane to catch," Aria began. "Can you all please give me and Dr. Everly a few minutes alone?" Nathaniel said in a deep, gruff voice. "Darling, whatever for? As your future wife, I should know everything that's happening to you, and frankly, I don't understand why we need this Dr. Everly when we already have a seasoned doctor like Dr. Williams. Your health is far too important for us to rely on some inexperienced doctor," Julia protested, gesturing disdainfully to Aria. "Dr. Everly was rated top surgeon alongside Dr. Rowan 4 years ago. Regardless of her age, I would not call her inexperienced." Tom Hill interjected in a honeyed drawl, earning a glare from Julia. "I asked for a few minutes with Dr. Everly," Nathaniel reiterated, giving Julia a blank stare. Aria recognized that if Julia persisted, Nathaniel's calm facade would falter. "I've already read your contract, Mr. Hawthorne, and I appreciate you thinking of me. But it's not really going to work. I have a life that I cannot give up even temporarily for anything or anyone," Aria said, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Tom," Nathaniel said simply. The older man sighed. "Miss Davies, please come," Tom said, urging Julia out of the room with the assistance of the 2 male servants, ignoring her protests. "Nathaniel, we really need to talk. This is ridiculous. I am your future wife," Julia protested. "It's just for a few minutes, darling," Nathaniel said, though Aria detected strain in his voice. As the door clicked shut, leaving them alone, Nathaniel held her gaze and continued. "Your hospital is temporarily shut down. I know your dad is gone. What other life is there in Sylvan Ridge, Dr. Everly? I don't see a ring on your finger. And if you are in a relationship..." He spoke with cold disdain, pausing to draw in a breath. When he spoke again, his voice carried a slight vibration of contained anger. "I was quite generous in my dealings with your debt, and on top of that, you will be paid for your service, so I am sure you would have plenty of money to go see him or bring him over. That's none of my concern, and I am certain Tom would not have brought you up here if you hadn't signed the contract." "Nathan," Aria attempted to interrupt, but he didn't let her. "This arrangement is not negotiable. You will stay, Aria. I don't give a damn what you have going on, or I swear I will auction off your hospital, take up the mortgage on your damn house, and buy off the entire Sylvan Ridge if I have to," he said in a voice that was forceful and gruff. "Why are you doing this, Nathan?" Aria asked in a low, shaky tone, noting his bitterness and anger. "You're the one who walked away. I tried so many times to reach you, to talk to you," she started to say in a fervent tone. "Don't flatter yourself, Doctor. This is not about us. I am merely employing your service, and I know you don't find me worthy enough of your time to accept, and I would not take a no for an answer," he retorted. Aria swallowed hard, giving him a searching gaze, both of their eyes welling with tears. "That's not true, Nathan," Aria whispered, but she understood why he would think that, her heart constricted with regret. Nathaniel chuckled. "We both know the truth, love, and I do not need your pity. Like I said, you are brought here for your expertise," he replied. "Why can't you just get a regular caregiver then?" Aria asked, feeling irritated as she wiped away a stray tear. "I do not intend to stay in this bed until I draw my last breath. I am going to live my life regardless of my illness, and you will be by my side to make sure I make it back to this bed every day. And if I slip into a coma, you will be there to make certain I am not resuscitated." "What? Have you gone mental? You are supposed to concentrate on getting a donor and not..." Aria started to say with a feeling, but Nathaniel cut her off with a sharp retort. "There's no donor, Dr. Everly. I have no blood relations that match. I have accepted that death is inevitable, and I don't want to talk about that with you. So, what is it going to be, Dr. Everly? Shall I rain down hell on Sylvan Ridge, or will you save us both the trouble?" Aria, knowing he was hiding his true emotion behind anger as he always did, refused to accept his words. "There's got to be another way, Nathan," she whispered with feeling. "There's none, baby," he rasped in a moment of weakness, holding her gaze briefly before looking away. "I can't stay here far away from Sylvan Ridge, Nathan," Aria said. "Would you rather I come there to you then?" Nathaniel probed. Aria tried to hide her dismay at the very thought. "No," she said in a firm tone, lowering her gaze. To Nathaniel, it was clear she was hiding something or someone, likely a lover. "He must be pretty special," Nathaniel remarked through gritted teeth. "Nathan!" Aria began, thinking perhaps she should tell him about their sons, but Nathaniel cut her off once more. "I'm not going to change my mind, Dr. Everly," Nathaniel murmured as he picked up his phone. Shortly after, a notification sound came from Aria's phone. With furrowed brows, she glanced down at it and saw that Nathaniel had transferred a ridiculous amount of money into her account. When she raised her widened gaze to meet his, he added, "Bring your life here to New York, Dr. Everly. I am prepared to stake all that I have on making you stay by my side until the very end." Aria grew irritated again, hating that he was throwing money at her to have his way instead of just asking her to stay. "Does your fiancé know about your plan?" Aria asked in a mocking drawl. "Of course not, but it doesn't matter. She will be significantly compensated as my widow when I'm gone," he replied, causing Aria's heart to constrict. "You're getting married?" Aria forced herself to ask, her voice sounding low and gruff with emotion. "Yes, in 3 weeks," he replied. Aria chuckled humorlessly and muttered, "Of course. So will you be staying?" Nathaniel asked. "No, I can't," Aria replied. but she couldn't escape his anxious and pained stare. "I'm not going to beg, Aria," he rasped, his voice carrying a pained defeat that tightened her heart painfully. "You have to give me time to figure this out. I have to go back. Aria's voice trailed off as she ran her fingers through her curls, contemplating how to care for Nathaniel and their twins without revealing the truth just yet. She needed to assess his situation thoroughly and find a way to tell him without it backfiring. Nathaniel was a man who had nothing to lose, and he had already shown her the lengths he would go to have his way regardless of her feelings. Nathaniel watched her agitated gestures and internal struggle. His heart constricted with pain, knowing that, despite his condition, she still couldn't bring herself to be with him. It hurt deeply that he had to resort to coercion to make her stay. His eyes trailed down her body, taking in her appearance. She looked even more beautiful than he remembered, and memories flooded his mind, causing his breathing to quicken. He had pushed those memories into the recesses of his mind after their breakup, needing to forget her to move on. But now, facing his impending death, he found himself desperately wanting her close, despite refusing to dwell on the reason why. Her indecision, despite his condition, made him feel worse than he had in years. "Forget it. I'll have Tom tear up the contract and return your hospital to you, and the papers showing the full mortgage payment for your house. Go, Aria," he said, turning away from her to hide his pain. "Nathan," Aria called softly, approaching his bedside and kneeling beside him. Nathaniel refused to look at her, reaching for his phone instead. Aria reached out to stop him, their hands touching briefly, causing Nathaniel to release a shaky breath. Aria quickly pulled back as if scolded. "I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I can't stay right now." "I need to put some things in order," she explained, avoiding his gaze. "I have people who can do that for you," Nathaniel said softly, realizing his sudden conditions were inconsiderate, but he had assumed she wouldn't want to stay. "It's not that kind of thing," Aria replied with a shaky laugh. "Are you in a relationship?" Nathaniel asked with bated breath, needing to know. Aria shook her head and Nathaniel let out a sigh of relief. "How long do you need?" "Even if I come back, Nathan, I can't stay here," Aria said, avoiding his gaze. "You can hardly avoid me, Aria." "You're going to be my caregiver," Nathaniel replied with dry humor. In response, Aria pressed her lips together in a semblance of a smile and began, "I can get my own apartment close by." "No," Nathaniel interrupted with finality, causing Aria to raise her eyes to meet his. "You will be staying in that room," he gestured to an adjoining door. "I really do not need to be that close, Nathaniel," Aria replied silently, noting the intimacy of their proximity. "That's the way it's going to be." "If I'm dying, I want to be able to have you close," he said abruptly, pausing when Aria took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry," he quickly added, noting her pained stare. "Ask me anything else that's not negotiable," he rasped. Aria lowered her gaze. She knew she couldn't bring the twins to Nathaniel's house. One look at them and a quick calculation would reveal the truth. No DNA test would be needed once he set his eyes on their sons. So then what could she do? "What time do I get off the clock?" Aria asked. When I'm in bed," Nathaniel replied gingerly. "I want the hospital back in operation," she said. "Fine," Nathaniel said with a resigned sigh. "Is that all?" he asked with a bit of irritation. "Do I get a day off?" Aria asked again. "Dr. Everly," Nathaniel started to say, resuming his former tone, but was cut off when Aria looked into his eyes with a sincere, questioning gleam that knocked him off his trail of thought. He remembered the countless times she would do that, and he would be helpless to stop himself from kissing her. "Why don't you tell me what you want? Then I will see if it works for me," he said in a voice that had gone deep and husky. Aria swallowed, and he didn't miss how her eyes lowered to his lips. "Damn it, Aria, I miss you," he thought to himself. "I want Sundays and Wednesdays off," Aria said. Nathaniel frowned. "That's 2 days." "What if I need you during your day off?" he asked. "You would have to think of a backup plan," she replied. "Or I could simply say no, Aria," he countered. "If you want me to accept your offer of staying here, you would have to give me something," she replied. He paused, giving her a searching gaze for about a minute before nodding in acceptance. "But you always have to come home to sleep," he replied. "Nathan," she started to protest. "You always have to come home to sleep under the same roof as me, Aria. You must always come home to me," he stated firmly. Aria held his gaze, Wondering if he heard himself and what his words implied, she looked away and nodded. A few minutes later, she made her way back to the foyer and toward the front door. Just outside on the porch, the driver Nathan had asked Tom to prepare to take her back to the airport, had pulled up in front of the house. Aria started to descend the porch stairs, but a voice sounded from behind her. "A minute, Dr. Everly." When Aria stopped to look back, she saw it was Julia. The taller woman casually strolled close to her, stopping just at the top of the stairs landing so she could tower over Aria. Putting her hands on her hips, she looked down the bridge of her perfectly straight nose at Aria. "In a few weeks, Nathaniel and I will finally tie the knot. After over a year together, our wedding is set in stone. I want to make it clear that nothing will come between me and becoming Nathaniel's wife. Whatever history you two shared is just that, history. You had your opportunity, and now it's my turn. Nathaniel Hawthorne belongs to me, and I won't let anyone, including someone from his past, interfere," she said with disdain, eyeing her up and down as if she was something that had just crawled out from under a rock infested with bugs. Sure. Congratulations. Or whatever floats your boat. Best of luck with that," Aria said. Julia blinked, evidently taken aback. "I hate to run, but I wasn't using the plane thing to get out of there." "I do have a plane to catch." "See you around, Miss Davies," she added, and hurried down the stairs. The driver was already opening the back door by the time she got to the car. "Thank you," she said to the driver, flashing him a smile before slipping into the car, still carrying her small luggage. Aria didn't know she was holding her breath until the car engine started, and the car moved. She resisted the urge to glance back at Nathaniel's fiancée. It felt like the time back in school when he used to strut about with his unending trail of admirers. She had known he would never be hers then, and nothing had changed. It still didn't stop the gripping pain in her heart. She took out her phone and flicked her thumb over the screen to reveal her boys. They looked so much like Nathaniel that her heart hurt. True, Nathaniel may never be hers, but she would forever have a piece of him in her sons. She simply needed to endure being near him without succumbing to her emotions, witnessing him love and marry another woman. All the while, living with the fear that she might lose him permanently to his illness if she doesn't find a way to tell him about their children soon. But how? The image of Tom Hill appeared in her mind, and she wondered if she could trust the older man with her secret. Nathaniel seemed to trust him, right? Despite the whirlwind sweeping through Aria's life, nature caught up with her, and she slept throughout the flight to Sylvan Ridge. Upon disembarking from the taxi that took her to her aunt's house, about 25 kilometers from her home, she could hear her boys' excited squeals coming from inside. Barely at the front porch, the door swung open, and the two hurried outside. "Oh my God, wear your jackets first, it's freezing out there," Anita protested as she rushed after them to quickly wear their winter jackets for them. "Mommy!" Owen cried in excitement, clapping and jumping, making Anita growl in comical frustration. "Welcome, Mummy," Liam called out. Aria chuckled, hurrying her steps as she climbed the front porch stairs. "Hello, my little knights. Hope you were good angels for Aunt Anita and Big Mama," Aria cooed as she dropped her bag, lowered to her knees, and swept the two into a hug, peppering kisses on their adorable faces, making them laugh. "Welcome, Aria," Anita said. "Thank you, Anita. Hope these two behaved," Aria said, still holding her boys. "They were perfect angels," she replied. Aria laughed. "I don't believe you, but thanks," she said. The other lady chuckled, reaching out to help with her bag, and refused to let it go when Aria tried to take it from her. "It's okay, you get the kids," Anita said. "Thank you," Aria repeated as she lifted her boys up with a comical groan, carrying them both inside. "My God, you've gotten bigger," she said. "No, we are not," Liam protested. "Maybe that's from the chicken pot pie Big Mama gave us," Owen said with an unabashed grin. Aria laughed and pressed a kiss on his hair as he burrowed his face into the nook of her neck. Aria's heart constricted as Nathaniel's smiling face flashed in her head. She let out a sigh. "Poor child, you look beat. Hope everything went well in New York?" her aunt asked. The older woman was behind the kitchen counter to the left corner of the open-floor living room. Aria let out a sigh as she lowered Owen and Liam onto a couch. "Do we get to reopen the hospital?" Anita asked as she dropped Aria's bag in a corner of the living room. Aria nodded in response, glancing from her aunt to Anita, who had been both a friend and an employee at the hospital for the past years. Anita was one of her father's trusted hands, and Aria had automatically been friends with her since she started volunteering to work at the hospital at the age of 13. Aria's father was a workaholic who had zero work and life balance. The hospital had always been everything to him, and helping people was always his focus, even more so when he lost his wife in an accident when Aria was 12. He grieved by letting his work swallow him whole, leaving Aria to process the loss of her mother alone. At first, Aria had been angry with him until the day she heard him sobbing in the middle of the night, when she opened his bedroom door. Calling out to him, he was sitting on the bed he'd shared with her mother, clutching one of her dresses to his nose as he shook in tears. Aria understood then that he was lost without her mother. She decided then to meet him halfway and find a middle ground where they could lean on each other and heal together, and the best place was for her to join him in the only nest he had built, which was the hospital. She had joined him then, volunteering at the hospital to do whatever she could. She recalled the first time he saw her helping out Mabel White to organize patients during a storm. He had stopped in the middle of the wide hallway, staring at her for a while with evident guilt etched on his face. "Hi, Dad," Aria had called out to him with a smile, and a slow, happy smile had slowly lit up his face. Aria, eventually turning out to be a doctor herself, had been inevitable. She had simply trailed after her father, following in his footsteps. "Yes, we can reopen the hospital, and we have enough money to make a few changes," Aria replied. Anita beamed. Her aunt, however, was studying her silently. "But," her aunt prompted, dropping the coffee mug in her hand to give Aria her full attention. Aria swallowed softly as she lowered her eyes to her boys, who were silent and watching the exchange as if they understood what was happening. Aria smiled at the two, reaching forward to roughen their hair. Liam arched an eyebrow at her, and Owen beamed before quickly running his fingers through his black curls. "Nathaniel Hawthorne has hired me to take care of him, and I'm afraid I have to move to New York with the boys," Aria said out loud, and the declaration made her heart skip with fear. "Nathaniel Hawthorne? The Farmer Hawthorne guy?" Anita asked in awe. Aria nodded, darting a glance in her aunt's direction. The older woman let out a deep sigh. Aria's aunt was the only soul who knew why she had stayed back in Sylvan Ridge after her father died. In her vulnerable state, she had spilled everything about her stormy relationship with Nathaniel in New York. She had been pregnant and alone, and had simply broken down. Contrary to what most people thought, Aria hadn't come back because of the hospital. She had chosen to stay because she was pregnant and needed to put enough space between her and Nathaniel, so she didn't go back begging him to see her again. "I will come with you," Aria's aunt said. "No, Auntie, I can't ask you to leave your life here in Sylvan Ridge and follow me to the city. You hate the city," Aria said with emotion. "My life, my dear niece, is where you are with your boys. Besides, I can't let you leave the boys with strangers," she said with a note of finality. Aria felt close to tears at the sacrifices the older woman was willing to make. "How long do we have?" the older woman asked. "A week. I'm to resume by Sunday," Aria said. The older woman nodded. "Then we had better start getting things in order," Anita said with excitement. Aria turned to her with furrowed brows. "You don't have to help with that, Anita. You have helped enough by watching the boys," Aria was saying. "I have never been to New York and I could use a break," Anita said. Aria gaped at her. "I can't let you do that," she said. "I will help you settle down. Then come back." "The hospital should do fine without me for a few days," she replied. I don't know what to say," Aria replied, feeling overwhelmed with emotions. "You are welcome," Anita said with a big smile. "Now what do we do first?" "Get an apartment in Manhattan," Aria replied with a grateful smile. "Manhattan? Fancy," she said with a pleased smile. Aria chuckled. Much later, after Aria had called up Mabel White to let her know about the reopening of the hospital, and the two had worked out a schedule for her to come back and attend to patients in need of surgery, while the other 4 doctors continued to attend to patients, she was on the back porch when the back door slowly opened and her aunt came out to stand by her side. "Thank you, Mabel," I will see you tomorrow, Aria said, ending the call. Aria stood there by her aunt for about a minute before the older woman said, "Does he know about the boys?" Her voice was low and gentle, but Aria could detect the concern in the soothing tone. "No," Aria replied simply. The older woman let out a sigh. "You have to tell him, Aria. He seemed like a man not to mess with, and I don't want you hurt," she said. "Yes, I know," Aria replied. The back door creaked open, drawing the attention of the two adults. Liam peered out with Owen right behind his brother. "How come you didn't ask if Owen and I wanted to go to New York?" Liam asked with a serious stare. "I hate the city too," he added. Aria and her aunt burst out laughing. "But you have never even been to the city, my love," Aria said, lowering herself to her twins' level so she could peer into their eyes. "Okay," Liam said in a thoughtful drawl. Owen quickly leaned into him and whispered, "It doesn't matter, it's the city." He sounded like the city in discussion was something evidently bad, especially if their big mama didn't like it. "Owen, do you have something to say to Mommy?" Aria asked in a gentle tone. "No, listen, Mommy. We should let Liam express his concerns," Owen replied firmly. Aria held back a laugh. "Why doesn't Big Mama like it?" Liam asked. "Because it's a big and complicated place with busy traffic and not easy for me to move around," Aria's aunt explained. "But I'm sure it would be great for young boys like you. You get to meet new friends and visit amazing places like Central Park, where you can play in giant playgrounds and ride on carousels. And there's the Children's Museum, where you can explore cool exhibits and learn new things. Plus, you can go to the zoo and see all kinds of animals like lions, giraffes." "I love giraffes," Liam exclaimed in excitement, interrupting the older woman. She chuckled. "They have little pandas too," Aria added, knowing Liam adored the cute, adorable animals. "I love baby pandas," Liam exclaimed. "Me too," Owen interjected. Aria let out a soft laugh. "Great. And do you know that your mommy used to live there when you were in her tummy? So she would know more wonderful places to take you to," Aria's aunt added with a smile, captivating the boys with the information. "It's going to be fun, I promise," Aria said with a warm smile. "Is that true, Mommy? Did we live in New York when we were in your tummy?" Owen asked. "Yes, my darling," Aria replied, remembering the magical months she had spent in New York with Nathaniel, and let out a sigh. "But what if we don't like it?" Liam asked with a worried frown. "If you don't like it, we will come back," Aria replied with determination. When Aria was left alone with her aunt again, the older woman asked, "Why does Nathaniel need a surgeon?" Aria turned to hold the older woman's gaze and replied, "He is not hiring me to operate on him, Auntie. He is hiring me to take care of him." The older woman frowned in bemusement. "I don't understand. Why does he need to do that?" she asked. "He has acute myeloid leukemia, Auntie. My Nathan is dying," Aria replied. Her voice shook and tears welled in her eyes. "Oh my God," her aunt gasped in shock and then added, "You cannot delay telling him, Aria," she urged with great concern.
Vind jij ons een goed team?
Natuurlijk. Captain Wild?
Wild and Hawks, het Dream Team. Sorry, Paul.
Metropolis 2, 26 november in de bioscoop.
Nathaniel sat in the reclining chair tucked away in a corner of his room, his gaze fixed on the panoramic view of Manhattan through the glass plane. The sprawling cityscape never failed to instill a sense of power and purpose within him, driving his ambition to conquer the wealth and influence of the city. Even in the face of his cancer diagnosis, the sight served as a reminder of his stakes and spurred him to maintain an aura of strength and invincibility. But now, after opening up his life to Aria Everly, everything seemed to pale in comparison to her presence. Memories of the past flooded his mind, blurring the lines between then and now. He attributed part of this turmoil to his mortality, which had stripped away his defenses, leaving him vulnerable to his emotions. All he could focus on was the overwhelming sensation of being with her, how she had captivated him, body, soul, and spirit. He clenched his fists and jaw, attempting to suppress thoughts of their painful separation, and instead recalling the joy they once shared. "I love you," Aria's voice echoed in his head, transporting him back to moments of passion and intimacy shared between them. His eyelids fluttered at the memory of her beneath him, vulnerable yet filled with love, as she whispered the words he had longed to hear. "My darling," he breathed in response. He let out a shaky breath, and a gentle knock on his bedroom door brought him back to the present. He didn't need to answer, he knew it was Tom Hill. The older man often checked on him at intervals, as if afraid he might slip away. His unwavering devotion sometimes veers into overprotection. Despite appreciating Tom's loyalty, Nathaniel couldn't help feeling irritated by the constant surveillance, even though he knew it stemmed from genuine concern. The door creaked open, and Tom peered inside before entering the room. "Is she back?" Nathaniel asked, his gaze fixed on the outside view. Tom smiled to himself, knowing exactly who Nathaniel meant. "No, she is not," he replied, settling onto one of the leather couches in a corner of the room. "She said you both agreed on Sunday," Tom added. "Yes," Nathaniel murmured, his voice low. "But today is Saturday. Knowing Aria, she'd already be in town. I don't understand why she refused the offer to use my jet to bring her back here." "I can't shake off the feeling that she is hiding something," Nathaniel said, his voice deep and gruff. "Something like what?" Tom asked, his interest piqued. "I wish I knew, Tom," Nathaniel replied, his tone sarcastic. Tom chuckled. "If she's hiding something, then it would appear that she's not the only one hiding something," Tom replied. Nathaniel craned his neck to give the older man an irritated glance. "Whatever do you mean?" he probed, his exasperation evident. "What are you doing, Nathaniel? Surely you must know it's obvious to everyone, including Miss Julia Davies, that Dr. Everly is not just anybody to you," Tom replied, leaning forward in his chair to give Nathaniel his full attention. "And I should care what Julia noticed because," Nathaniel said, a hint of arrogance in his tone. Tom sighed and rubbed his hands over his face. "You made the girl your fiancée, Nathaniel. Normally people care what their fiancé feels or thinks, especially if they decide to invite their ex into their home to care for them and stay in an adjoining room," Tom replied, his patience evident. "Tom, you and I know Julia isn't marrying me for any sentimental reasons," Nathaniel scoffed dismissively. "I know. What bothers me, Nathaniel, is why that doesn't bother you. We don't need the Davies support anymore, yet you proposed to the girl, which would have been great if you even liked her a little," Tom said, his frustration evident, his voice unintentionally raising. Nathaniel threw him a sharp, cautioning glance. Tom took a deep breath to calm himself. "Julia is ambitious, intelligent, and strategic. With a background in business management, she excels at fundraising and navigating social circles. She understands the intricacies of power dynamics and knows how to leverage them to her advantage. With her skills, both of you would be capable of managing Farmer Hawthorne once I'm no longer able to. Or gone," Nathaniel explained. "I wish. Heavens, I wish you would stop saying that, Nathaniel. I'm supposed to go before you, and your child would be the next person to take over from you, not me, and definitely not her," Tom replied with practiced calmness, but still his frustration and emotion were evident. He then paused to contain his emotions, trying not to say something that would cause a rift between him and Nathaniel. "Why are you not with her?" Tom suddenly asked, his tone low and emotional. His heart tightened with emotion when Nathaniel didn't ask who he meant. He knew from the moment he witnessed Dr. Everly's reaction to the news of Nathaniel's sickness that there was much more between the two than just being alumni of Harvard University. Witnessing how the young lady had cared for Nathaniel and how Nathaniel had looked at her with so much trust, he knew Nathaniel should not be marrying Julia. "Why is she not the woman you're about to marry, Nathaniel?" Tom added, looking at Nathaniel. Nathaniel looked away, staring out of the window without responding. Tom sighed and got up to leave. Just as he reached for the door, Nathaniel said, "Since you asked, it's only fair that you know that she doesn't love me enough for that." Tom turned around to face Nathaniel, furrowing his brows, somewhat knowing that couldn't be true. "I know you don't approve of Julia, but with her, I know exactly what I'm getting into," Nathaniel added in a cold, withdrawn tone. "Can you do something for me, Nathaniel? I know that I am nothing but a lawyer to you, but to me, you are so much more." "So then I have no right to ask you to do anything for me," Tom Hill started to say a tad emotionally. "Out with it, Tom," Nathaniel snapped, cutting off the older man's emotional tirade. Okay, I would like you to please slow down this marriage plan to Julia and see if there's still anything there between you and Dr. Everly, Tom said in a pleading tone. Nathaniel chuckled humorlessly. You don't understand, Tom. There will always be something there between me and Aria. The problem is I am me, which I find is a major deal breaker for her, Nathaniel growled passionately. Nathaniel! Tom called with emotion, but Nathaniel hated the pity in his voice and eyes, hardening his heart. I appreciate your concern for me, Tom, but you don't know anything about me and Aria, and no, I will not be slowing down my wedding plan with Julia. I made her a promise, and I intend to keep my word, Nathaniel retorted. Tom slowly nodded, lowering his gaze. As he made to leave the room, Nathaniel added, Don't go getting the idea of meddling, Tom. I may be dying, but that doesn't make me weak. Aria made herself pretty clear to me years ago, and I intend to stay out of her life. Tom let out a sigh. He heard Nathaniel loud and clear, and the contradiction of his claim did not escape him either. Yes, Nathaniel was right. Tom didn't know the intricacies of what happened between him and the young doctor. Yet, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about Nathaniel's perception, especially remembering how Dr. Everly had signed the contract as soon as she knew Nathaniel was sick, despite her initial protests. Don't worry, I won't meddle. I doubt it would make any difference. Miss Julia Davis had already told Dr. Everly off before she left, Tom said, then left, closing the door behind him. He paused with bated breath, waiting for Nathaniel's reaction. Son of a... Who does she think she is? Tom heard Nathaniel let out a string of expletives, followed by a short silence. Then he heard Nathaniel say, Hello, Julia. I'm fine. Babe, we need to talk, in a calm, controlled tone that Tom knew all too well. Tom smiled and walked away, thinking he needed to find out what exactly happened between Nathaniel and Dr. Everly. He knew Nathaniel was not easy to love. The boy had been pampered and shielded all his life, and Dr. Everly seemed like the exact opposite. She appeared down to earth and would be best paired with a considerate, responsible, and kind man, all of which Nathaniel wasn't during his studies at Harvard. But if the good doctor could be given the opportunity to see that Nathaniel wasn't the same boy she once knew, would she perhaps give him another chance? Whichever way, Tom intended to find out. Nathaniel may be obnoxious, but that didn't mean he deserved to be plunged into a loveless marriage with someone like Julia Davies. However, Tom knew he would need to give the couple time to get reacquainted. Buying off Everly Hospital and laying off the staff didn't actually show that Nathaniel had changed, and he somewhat knew that Dr. Everly needed to see the vulnerable Nathaniel that he knew, not the Nathaniel Hawthorne everyone perceived as cold and withdrawn. So what do you think? Mrs. Watson asked, giving her an anxious gaze. Aria chuckled as the two walked back to the living room after examining the luxurious apartment. Aria understood the other woman's nervousness. This was the fourth house they'd seen in the past 2 days, and Aria hadn't liked the first 3. However, this one seemed more homely and childproof for her boys. The rooftop pool was secured, located above the living quarters, accessible only by climbing several stairs with a trapdoor at the top, ensuring her boys couldn't access it without adult supervision. The apartment boasted 5 bedrooms, providing enough space for her aunt, Anita, and her boys to each have their own room. And when Anita left, the twins' new nanny could take the spare room. The building itself was secure, with each tenant having their own main entrance keycard and a security post in addition to the management's office in the expansive lobby. Being only 2 streets away from Nathaniel's place meant she could easily come and go as she pleased. Though she intended for her boys to be homeschooled for now, she had researched school options in the area, finding a highly rated one within the secured community, albeit exclusive to billionaires and celebrities. A frustrating reality. She hoped the boy's surname and her vocation would alleviate when the time comes. There was also a nearby family park with numerous activities, which would serve as a fun place for the boys during breaks from their studies. I'll take this, Aria said. The agent let out a loud sigh of relief. I had a feeling you would. It's the very best I have, although I wasn't sure of your budget, she replied. Aria did not reply to that. A few weeks ago, that might have been an issue, but not with Nathan depositing money into her account at intervals, as if that would make her more committed. He had paid 2 years in advance, far more than she'd earned as a surgeon, unknowingly ensuring she could provide everything her sons needed to keep them safe and comfortable. "If you have the contract papers here, I can sign them now and transfer the funds," Aria said. Mrs. Watson beamed and quickly took out a folder. After signing, the older woman asked, "Is there anything else I can do for you, Dr. Everly?" Sounding eager now that she knew Aria could afford the expensive apartment. Thinking the fact that she could afford it meant she must come from a wealthy family or be a peculiar kind of doctor. "As a matter of fact, I do. I was wondering if you could recommend a reputable agency that could help me secure a driver and nanny." "Oh, I know just the person to help," Mrs. Watson exclaimed in delight. Aria spent the entire weekend assisting her sons, aunt, and friend with settling into the new apartment. They worked diligently to personalize the already furnished space, arranging pictures on the living room mantel and selecting decorations for the boys' rooms. On Sunday evening, Aria ensured she had dinner with her aunt, Anita, and her boys. After helping to tuck them into bed early, she called an Uber to take her to Nathaniel's house. Meanwhile, Nathaniel was restless, pacing in his room and constantly checking outside the window, eagerly awaiting her arrival. When his energy waned, he reluctantly settled into a corner chair, frustrated by his own vulnerabilities and inability to go get her. Nathaniel felt especially annoyed that Julia had chosen to visit his house that very day under the guise of smoothing things over with Dr. Everly after their recent confrontation. Julia had apologized and promised to make amends, forcing Nathaniel to accept, albeit begrudgingly. He disliked the idea of Julia being present when Aria arrived that evening, but he had little choice in the matter. She had spent the entire day fussing over him, and despite feeling guilty for wanting her gone, Nathaniel had made an extra effort to be accommodating. The faint sound of a car engine outside on his porch made his heart skip a beat. He longed to greet Aria at the door himself, but he felt drained. Perhaps it was because he had exhausted the last reserves of adrenaline that had kept him going all day. As the cab came to a stop outside Nathaniel's home, 3 male servants emerged to assist Aria with her bags, carrying them up the grand porch stairs while she settled the fare with the cab driver. Stepping out of the cab, she took a deep breath and climbed the stairs to the front door, feeling a sense of apprehension. Being at close quarters with Nathaniel and taking care of him stirred up mixed emotions, leaving her uncertain about what to expect. However, one thing was clear in her mind: she needed to find a way to inform him about their sons. Upon entering through the double entryway, Aria cursed under her breath upon seeing Julia, Nathaniel's fiancée, descending the staircase. Unsure if the woman resided there, Aria felt highly uncomfortable in her presence, reminiscent of past conflicts during her university days with Nathaniel and Agatha McCarthy. She hoped Julia wouldn't be as spiteful as Agatha, who had once attempted to distribute Aria's nudes online in response to Nathaniel's interest in her. If Nathaniel hadn't intervened, Aria knew those images might still be circulating. "Welcome, Dr. Everly," Julia greeted her as she approached Aria. Aria responded with a non-committal murmur and glanced around for Tom Hill, hoping for someone to provide support if needed. "I apologize for our previous encounter. There was a misunderstanding, and I regret if my caution came across as offensive. As a woman, I'm sure you understand my desire to protect what's mine. Nathaniel means the world to me, and I have no qualms about staking my claim." "It's best you understand where you stand in relation to him," Julia explained. Aria absorbed Julia's words, silently noting the underlying tension. "Of course, Miss Davies," Aria replied, meeting the other woman's gaze briefly before averting her eyes. She had a few choice words in mind to reply to that, but she remembered Nathaniel's announcement of his upcoming marriage in 3 weeks. It meant this woman would soon become a stepmother to her children, and the last thing Aria wanted was to escalate any tension that might ultimately affect her boys. "Good. I'm glad we've gotten that out of the way. Don't forget to mention to Nat that we're good now," Julia said unabashedly, her smile widening as she clapped her hands together. "Now let me show you to the servant quarters." Aria nodded, noting the emphasis Julia placed on the word servants. As Julia turned and headed towards a hallway to the left corner of the foyer, Aria followed her down the corridor, descending another flight of stairs until they reached an open area resembling a courtyard. In the center, a water fountain was surrounded by a garden of colorful flowers, illuminated beautifully by tall garden lamps casting an orange glow under the dark sky. The air was filled with the scent of exotic blooms, the freshness of the breeze, and the aroma of freshly trimmed grass. Aria inhaled deeply, enjoying the calming ambience. As they made their way toward a building nestled among tall trees, their progress was abruptly halted by a sharp voice. "Where are you going?" Tom Hill called out, appearing perplexed. "What does it look like, Tom?" Julia replied, her tone tinged with annoyance and impatience. "I want to show the doctor to her room," she added firmly. "What?" Tom responded incredulously. "Since when do you show guests to their rooms in this house?" he added, his tone laced with mockery. Julia bristled. "I informed Nathaniel that I would assist in showing Dr. Everly to her room, and he agreed. Besides, she's not a mere guest. She'll be working here, which qualifies her as a servant," she retorted defensively. "I believe you're mistaken, Miss Davis. Perhaps if you allow the staff here to handle their duties, misunderstandings like this could be avoided," Tom replied evenly. "What do you mean?" Julia asked, her tone tense with irritation. "I mean you don't reside here and aren't privy to the instructions given." Tom began to explain. "I am to be Nathaniel's wife and as his fiancée." Julia attempted to interject, but Tom cut her off, his frustration evident. "You're not his wife yet, Miss Davies."
Even kijken.
Tom snapped, meeting Julia's glare with unwavering resolve. Taking a calming breath, he turned to Aria, who was observing the exchange in silence. "Please, Dr. Everly, I am so sorry for the misunderstanding." "If you would please come with me," Tom urged. Aria loathed being drawn back into Nathaniel's drama-filled life after all these years, especially with the same female drama, but this time she couldn't just walk away. Avoiding eye contact with the other woman, she returned to join Tom Hill. The older man gestured for her to go ahead, following closely behind her. Just like the first time she came, he escorted her up the elevator and towards Nathaniel's quarters, but this time he bypassed Nathaniel's door and led her to the entrance door beside his, pushing it open with a polite nod, then stepping back to allow her entry. "Thank you," Aria said as she passed the older man and entered the spacious room. Tom Hill followed inside and shut the door behind him. Aria noticed her bags packed to the side of one of the adjoining rooms, and since there was no wardrobe in sight, she guessed it must be a walk-in closet. "Before I leave you, Dr. Everly, I want to apologize once again for that mix-up," Tom Hill began. "It's okay. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," Aria interjected, interrupting the older man. He held her gaze for a moment, and Tom could tell that the young doctor knew quite well that that was no mix-up. He nodded in acknowledgement, liking her even more. "Please, if you need anything at all," he said as he took out a business card and offered it to Aria. "Call me," he added. "Thank you, I will," Aria replied. A loud slam of the door from the next room made the two pause, followed by a muffled yell. "I want Tom gone, Nathaniel. And why the hell is that woman taking up the room you said I could sleep in?" There was a quiet reply, but it wasn't distinct. When Julia shouted again, demanding Tom's firing, a very clear, loud voice retorted, "Hey!" Silence ensued. Aria threw a worried glance at Tom, who reassured her with a smile before leaving. Aria sat at the edge of the bed, straining her ears to hear what was being said in Nathaniel's room, but the voices were now muffled. Letting out a sigh and hoping Tom wouldn't lose his job, Aria went to have her bath and changed into pajamas before settling under the covers. She briefly considered calling her aunt or Anita, but decided against it when she checked the time. "I'm sorry, baby," Aria heard Julia's distinct voice, wondering if Tom Hill still had his job. Nathaniel blamed himself for what Julia did to Aria. He believed he shouldn't have trusted her to handle the situation alone. He should have had Tom wait outside until Aria arrived. He couldn't believe Julia had tried to make Aria stay in the servants' quarters, and she had the audacity to ask him to fire Tom and yell at him in his own house. "Keep your voice down, I'm not deaf," he had cautioned her initially, but the woman evidently knew no boundaries and continued to yell as if she owned the place. "Hey!" He had yelled to get her attention and then growled in a low voice, "You will watch yourself or leave my house and come back when you are ready to have a conversation like an adult." That had subdued her, and with her own words, she had implicated herself in what she had done, feigning innocence as if she was speaking with a dimwit. He hadn't seen this side of her before, and that furrowed his brows. Was he making a mistake with Julia? He figured she was a good candidate to work alongside Tom to maintain his family legacy, but was there something Tom was seeing in Julia that he was deliberately being blind to? "Tom is not an employee I can simply fire, Julia, and Dr. Everly is staying close because of my condition. I'm just being practical, so let's not speak of it again. It's late, Julia. You should go home," Nathaniel said. Sometime in the night, Aria woke up, not quite sure what had roused her, and saw Nathaniel sitting by the couch beside her bed, watching her. "Oh my God, what time is it?" "Did I oversleep?" Aria said as she bolted up to a sitting position. "No, it's 3 a.m, Nathaniel replied in a tired voice. Aria frowned. "Are you okay? Do you need something? How long have you been sitting there?" She fired questions at him, letting her worry and nervousness get the best of her. "Relax, Dr. Everly. I suffer from insomnia sometimes, and I haven't been here long. I came over to welcome you and let you know that when I'm in bed, this door stays open," he said, gesturing to the adjoining door, which was now wide open, and from where Aria sat, she could see Nathaniel's bed. She swallowed softly. "I apologize for waking you. I forgot you were a light sleeper unless, of course, you were intoxicated," he said with a hint of humor as he got up to walk back to his room. "Ha, very funny," Aria replied, hearing him chuckle. She watched him pull off his robe, leaving only his boxers. Aria retracted her earlier deductions that he looked pretty much the same. His skin was as pale as death, and he still had the beanie cap on. His impossibly broad shoulders were prominent due to his weight loss, and although he looked okay, she remembered how great he used to look. Nathaniel caught her looking at him and paused for a minute before slipping up.